All right, so intro to the P wave is what we're going to call it today. Presented by Dr. Perkinji F. Ibers. That's a paramedic joke. You'll get that later on. It's funny. Kevin, isn't it funny? It's funny. Thank you. Okay, so the first thing we've got to understand, can everybody see? Am I in anybody's way over here? Can everybody see the screen? First thing we got to understand, and I think we talked about this, the last couple weeks, and I think for the most part, I think you've got a grasp for it, but we have to understand that there's a difference between mechanical activity of the heart and electrical activity of the heart. And normally, for all of us, hopefully all of us right now, the mechanical activity and the electrical activity are matching up. But sometimes that doesn't happen. So we have to look at them separately. We have to look at mechanical activity as one thing, and that's the actual pumping of the heart and the pulse. And we have to look at the electrical activity of the heart and what it's doing. So we have to look at them separate. So if we can understand that just because there's electrical activity doesn't mean there's mechanical activity, this will go a lot smoother. So is everybody kosher with that? Does everybody understand what I'm saying with that? That we have to separate those two things out? We good with that? Okay. All right. So literally what we're going to do is we're going to go through what the waveforms are. We're going to show you what all the waves are, and then we're going to start labeling some stuff, and then we're going to start measuring stuff, and we'll go from there. So let's start out with this. So this is a complex. This is a P wave, a QRS complex, a T wave. The first thing you see up there, P wave right here. Can everyone see the P wave right in this area here? All right. So what the P wave is well, let's back up just a second. Let's talk about the isoelectric line. Okay, that's the first thing you have to understand is isoelectric line, and that is baseline. Everyone knows what asystole looks like. Just that one solid line, right? Well, that's an isoelectric line. It's just a baseline for it. So in this case, let me switch my colors around. In this case here, the isoelectric line is like right here. It's supposed to be straight, okay? No wavy like that. So that's the baseline. That's what everything based off of. So anything above the isoelectric line is what we call positive, and everything below the isoelectric line is we call negative. Okay, so we're talking about a positive wave. It goes above the isoelectric line, or something that's negative is below the isoelectric line. Okay, is everybody good with that? Okay, so the first wave we're going to come to is the P wave. It's the first movement away from the isoelectric line. It's supposed to be nice and smooth. You see how this one is here? It's just a nice smooth wave. Supposed to be positive in nature. It doesn't always have to be positive. It can be negative. It can be inverted from that. So it can actually dip below the isoelectric line. But that's the P wave. It's our first movement away from the isoelectric line, either direction. Okay? Good with that? All right, our next wave is the Q wave. All right, the Q wave is the first negative deflection that's after the P wave. All right, so first negative deflection, so it's negative, so it's below the isoelectric line. So here's our isoelectric line. The Q wave is the first negative wave that's there. Okay. Next, you have the nice big tall peaked R wave there. It's the positive. The QRS is often referred to as the QRS complex because they happen in such a fast succession there that they just call it one complex for the most part. They'll refer to it as a QRS complex. But there are individual parts to it. So the R wave is the positive waveform after the Q wave. So you can see, right, so electric line again, it's this positive wave that's here. Okay? S wave is the negative deflection following the R wave. All right, so this is the S wave down here. And the S wave stops whenever it comes back to this isoelectric line here. So once the S wave comes back up, right here, where it comes back to the isoelectric line, that's what we call the J point. All right, you see the J here, it's labeled a J point. That's where that S wave comes right back to normal. So right here. And then our last wave is the T wave. And it's It should come off of the isoelectric line when everything's normal, and it's just a nice, slow, gradual wave as well. Okay? So, P wave, first positive or first wave off the isoelectric line, first movement we're going to have off of the isoelectric line. Q wave is your first negative deflection off the isoelectric line after a P wave. R wave is our nice tall peaked one. S wave is the negative wave after the QR. Your J point is where your S wave comes back to the isoelectric line. And then your T wave is your nice gradual wave at the end of your form there.
So is it safe to call the isoelectric line the baseline too?
Yes. Baseline, isoelectric line, I'm okay with using those the same. That's fine. Whoops. Don't want to do that. Okay.
Can your QRS be inverted?
Well, we're going to talk about that in a second. We'll talk about it right now. So, your QRS may not always be a QRS. We're going to talk later about what all, why these bumps are positive and negative and that sort of stuff. But you may not always have a true QRS. If this comes along and there is no negative deflection and it just goes straight up, what is that? Is that a Q wave or an R wave? It's an R wave, right? Because the Q wave's a negative deflection. So if this comes along and immediately goes up, then you don't have a Q wave. You've got an R wave. So you've got instead of a QRS, you've got an RS. So maybe it looks something like this. I don't know. We're going to try. I haven't tried writing on this paper yet, so let's try. So we go along, and instead of our dipping, we got our P wave here, and then we go something like this. Maybe not like that, because that's not a good drawing. Anybody try drawing not looking at paper? It's not the easiest thing. So something like this. A lot of artifact in that. It's okay. My hand jiggled. It's all right. All right, so let's try one more time. So P wave, no Q wave, goes right into your R, S, back to your isoelectric line, and then your T wave. All right, that's much better. So you may not have that Q wave. You may not have an R wave. I mean, you can drop these, and that's something to know. When we talk about some of the different things that we're going to look at when we're looking at rhythms, those are things to note. And that's all going to go into your mind, just like we did last week, where we talked about chest pain. We talked about what it could be. It could be this, 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 or this, and we kind of started ruling stuff out or ruling stuff in, stuff like that. We're going to do the same thing whenever you're analyzing, cardiac rhythms. You're going to look at it, and you're going to, based off of the measurements and what's there, you're going to go, okay, it could be this, it could be this, it's not that, and you're going to kind of weed stuff out of the list until you come up with one answer. Yeah, you could not have P waves, you could not have Q waves, any number of things could happen. You could have inverted P waves, you could have inverted T waves. There's a tons of things that can go on. Okay, did that answer your question? Gibbs, did I cover your question okay? Okay, anything else? Over just basic labeling of the rhythms. Okay, so let's practice one here. I could find my layers. It's up here. Here we go, layers. Okay. So I'm going to try this again. Try this one more time. All right, so we come along here. We got this little P wave. That is not the right measurement, but that's okay. We'll worry about measurements later. Okay. So what would this be? P wave, okay. What about this thing? Q, okay. R. What's this over here? Okay, good. See, I got to mix it up so you just don't follow the alphabet. You all know the alphabet. I know that. Okay. What's this? Okay. What are we missing? J point. Okay, where's the J point? Is it here? Right where the S comes back the isoelectric line. So right, yeah, okay, all right. Give my drawing. Okay, I cannot draw a straight line on paper, let alone on a tablet. Give me a break here. Okay, so we'll call it. We'll say that this actually looks like this. We'll call this the J point. Okay. So we can look and we can identify all the parts of these rhythms, okay? All right, so let's practice.